You're listening to the RM Podcast, the official podcast of Red Moon Productions. Here are your hosts, Brandon Davidson, Keith Cheatham, and Sean Sebastian. Enjoy.
Welcome to yet again. Yes, it's Tuesday night, live 9 p.m. Another episode of the Red Moon Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Brandon Davidson, alongside our normal new host, Sean Sebastian, and Keith Cheatham. Welcome back, everybody, for another spooky Halloween Eve.
Spooky!
show.
You love saying spooky.
I do.
I was earlier
Did I
today.
say that?
Well, no, earlier today when I was looking back at past Halloween podcasts to see the things we talked about, and I was just
Do I always
fast
say
forwarding
that?
it. Well, there was one whole episode we kept making fun of you for spooky and spooktacular.
Oh, I do remember.
And it was like, I think it
do
was one from
remember
like
that.
2019 because I was cracking up.
I do remember that.
Spooktacular.
It was great.
Because, well, I think it wasn't just ribbing me. I think somebody was just tired of hearing spook. Or somebody in the comments section or something said they didn't want to hear a spooktacular.
So
we
a lot
just
of
kept
ads do,
repeating
yeah,
it.
spooktacular, and yeah, it was just
Yeah.
It
funny.
might have even been Neil or somebody that just commented and was like, just don't do any of that. Like, don't say
No
that.
spook.
spooky.
So
It's so spooky.
we got
That's
to
my PlayStation tag.
Spook Mag, yeah.
Spook Mag.
Well,
Well,
you
you're
want
a
to look
spook.
me up on the PSN.
I actually
Send
like
me a
your
friend request.
I like
I'll play
your
with you.
PlayStation name. I don't like mine. Mine's weird. First Snake.
Yours is
26.
fine. I like yours.
I gotta change. It's from like
I know.
back in the
I've
day
had
when you
mine
couldn't
since
change.
I've had
yours.
mine since freaking middle school. Green
Yeah,
Falcon
you can.
08.
Now you can change it, can't you?
It's
yeah,
like
you have to pay though.
I don't
They
like
just
mine
now
either,
made
but
it
I'm
where
just
you
like
can change your email address that's
Yeah.
associated
Yeah.
with it.
Wow, that's
Mhm.
kind of like that should have been from day one.
Right.
Really.
I don't like mine either, but it's the same one I've had since Halo 1 before even online gaming. It's just what I called my
Yeah, go
character
on.
in the multiplayer. So
Well,
yeah.
my AIM account was Brandon Aaron 77, and I've got that tied to so many things. But no, we were just talking before the show, and this is before the mics were cracked open.
Before anybody could hear
You know,
us,
so right now we're on YouTube and Facebook Live, as we are every Tuesday
The
night at 9
YouTubes.
p.m. Eastern.
when they don't try to censor us, that happened last week.
It always does. They always try to fight and censor us.
We,
but not this time.
we
We
chose
will
a-
not comply. We will not bow down.
We will not comply. Evil dies tonight.
YouTube dies tonight.
We tried to use a song that was a little too popular last
Well,
week.
it makes me mad because, of course,
yeah.
you.
I don't know who said
Who listens to that?
I know.
I know.
But that's what I thought.
God.
I was like, surely nobody's. I mean, I was
mean,
like, okay, the Ramones.
It
I
is the
understand.
Ramones.
Yeah.
They're a big band, but nobody that's not a
Pet
popular
Sematary?
Ramones
Yeah.
song. Yeah.
But it is. It was on their greatest hits album, and enough people
Apparently, it is.
Or it's just one of those bands, and I could see the Ramones being this way, where they're just like, no, none of our music can be used on anything. Screw them. And I swear, that's how some of these like freaking artists are.
Yeah.
Prince is that way. I won't use it. Michael Jackson, I'm not even going to touch. I'm not going to try to throw them on there. But what is funny is, I think it was like,
Still get.
was it 2 years ago?
I'm still getting
Oh,
like
controllers.
controller
We're, all
ads
right,
and
we're,
stuff.
don't say it. Don't
Oh,
say
go
it.
ahead,
We're going to
go
talk about our experiment here in a second.
Oh.
But no, it was like 2 years ago. We did, I think, maybe it was a year ago. We did "Don't Fear the Reaper,"
Yeah.
and I'm like, that's a way bigger
Yeah.
song.
We did not
did
get
And
that
we
to
didn't
the
get. We
You
didn't
did
get
it for
flagged
the
for
stand, didn't you? When we
No,
did a review of
it
the
was
stand?
just for Halloween.
Halloween. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And I did it for that to just lead us into Halloween or Halloween episode. Didn't
Yeah.
get flagged. So yeah, if you didn't see our show last week on Facebook or
Yeah.
you saw it delayed, it was because of that.
Yeah.
However, the phenomenon we're talking about before the show. I have the Twilight Zone. I don't have the. You know what I wish I had?
I think Twilight Zone fits, honestly.
It
Yeah.
does.
Yeah.
But I wanted
That's
the X Files.
I used to have that as my ringtone.
I love it. I love that.
But no. So, well, actually, you all set it up. You all were the ones that encountered this. I was still at work. But this is actually we're going to try to maybe come up with an experiment
We're gonna try to see
for this show alone.
So me and Sean, we usually get together and go to Brandon's neighbors to smoke cigars and whatnot before the show. But he was sick this week, so Sean came to my house, and we were just sitting out back smoking a cigar at the table, discussing my dog who has allergies, and Sean suggested something that his vet told him to switch him to like a lamb and rice dog food.
Yeah.
And then we got on the conversation of Tractor Supply, and Sean was like,
where you can buy the dog
yeah.
food.
And Sean was like, oh yeah, there's a Tractor Supply right there by Bargain Hunt. So then about a half hour later, scrolling through Facebook,
No, wait. It was also for a very particular thing.
Well, it was,
wasn't
I said lamb dog.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Lamb and
So-
rice dog
I
food.
totally missed that. I'm
as
sorry.
I was going through Facebook, I found there was an ad on there for lamb and rice dog food from Bargain Hunt. And I mean, I know they cater ads, but it was so specific. I was like, that thing had to be listening to us because we didn't search it, didn't Google it.
Nope.
I haven't looked up dog food of any kind, and I don't know how long because I mean, I've bought the same kind for over like a year. So it's just creepy because it's like, how does it know? And Facebook swears they don't listen to you. They track you. They know when you're in vicinity to other people that have Facebook and what they like.
We had a similar instance of this at the lake
Yeah.
this year when we went.
But then
and
again-
here's the thing, and this is what I likened it to. So we were there at the lake, me, you, Sean, all of us here, and then my neighbor Brian. And we were out on the porch at night, and Brian, we were joking around trying to come up with some music. And I was talking about this one specific song from Rammstein, which it's a German rock band.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like they're
death
not
metal.
just like, oh, number one at the top of the charts all of a sudden.
Right.
But it's like, so we were talking about Rammstein, and Brian plays it on his phone. And then the very next day, Keith got an ad or at least something about
We
promoting
came back
Rammstein
home.
on
With, I
Facebook.
got a news article about how he was arrested in, I think, Russia. Yeah. And I was just like, where did this
Too many
so-
golden showers.
I was like, I haven't listened to other than at the lake, which that wasn't my phone that searched for it, but I haven't searched or listened to Rammstein since we were in like
so
high
what,
school.
what I likened it to was, okay, well, Brian's friends with you on Facebook. Brian listened to it. Somehow they knew you were within the vicinity of Brian.
And Facebook does admit to
And I-
doing that, tracking
yes.
who you're by.
Right. yeah.
Exactly. And so I swear I've come across articles where they literally said they can predict when people poop. No doubt. Facebook has
Their AI
they've
is-
admitted to it.
Yeah.
But I'm sitting here thinking of a logical way in which you all are sitting there in your back patio just talking,
Yeah.
and this pops up without ever searching for it,
No.
without ever having searched for it.
Well,
Because even Sean, I asked
It
you,
happened
had
twice.
you
Did
searched
talk
of it
about
before?
the TV?
We haven't mentioned the TV
Okay.
yet.
Yeah,
So-
so this came up also.
Yeah.
This
so
was right before the show when you all were telling me
right
this.
before we came over here. Brian called because he wanted to get connected to my Plex because he bought a new television. So he said, "Yeah, man, I got. We're talking on the phone." And I believe that this is after I had turned my Hey Siri off.
Yeah.
My
There it goes.
iPad just did it.
Oh, see?
Stupid.
Oh.
It's listening. The iPad's listening.
Maybe that's part of the problem because your iPad's still listening.
I'm
know,
telling
man.
you. Well,
But
we
anyway,
just
so-
caught before the show your watch.
He said,
went off.
yeah. So he said, yeah, man, I got a new Samsung TV, and it's different. And we talked about how it doesn't come with the bolts to mount it to a TV mount on the wall. And so just a few minutes before we started the show, Keith is scrolling through his Facebook, and there's an advertisement for a Samsung
TVs.
TV.
Oh, I still
and then
have
on mine, there's advertisements for the wall mounts.
Oh, that's great. See, and this is where it was funny because it was one of those moments where Keith was just scrolling through his phone and he goes, "Look," and he showed it to Sean, and Sean goes, "That's crazy. That's crazy." And I was like, "What?" And he was like, "It was the TV we were just talking about." And I'm like, all right, okay, all right.
It's creepy. Well,
I don't know what the methodology
we're
is. but
trying
I
to
don't fully
experiment
believe
that it's listening, but it has to have like because we started talking about PlayStation 5, the Lava Red controller.
Well, crap!
And
you
I'm
gave it away.
Well, I
now
know.
it's definitely gonna happen.
Well, I'm still getting all kinds of.
Sean's got one.
Uh-oh.
Well, here's another weird one. I turned off
But I
the
think-
listen setting, and it's on my phone now.
Well, I don't know about that. It's alive.
She turned herself back
It's
on.
alive.
The machine knows.
But here's the thing: I'm still getting ads for different types of controllers. Like, and I'm on my
Well,
iPad now.
and here's the
so
weird thing.
it my phone obviously communicates with the iPad or vice versa, or Facebook, anyways, whether you're
Yeah,
on or
if
not.
it sends the
but
data
I mean,
somewhere,
it's still it's still
I
going.
can't see that. Show that.
Like,
This is
that's-
apparently from
That's
most,
one.
None of them have been PS5 controllers.
No, they have been, but they've not been the Lava Red.
or the Midnight Black.
No.
from Walmart.
No, well, here was our experiment. our experiment, and maybe we'll do this during the review because we're coming up on the review.
Yeah.
And tell us what you think in the comments. If you've had the same occurrence,
Is
if this
Facebook
is
listening?
creepy.
See, look.
Even when they say they're
look,
not.
controller, like different gaming. You know.
Wow.
it's
But
just-
here's the thing.
I like
I get articles all day.
Yeah.
From the things
Well,
I follow.
It knows I like tech, so some of that I can understand.
Right. Yeah.
It just the one that creeped me out
Specifically
was the dog
controllers.
food because that one was specific.
Yeah.
Now some of these others I could be like, well, they know my interest, but the dog food one was
experiment
creepy.
that we were going to try was we were going to talk about something off mic. That obviously now that we're streaming on YouTube, on Facebook, we expect for certain algorithms to pick this up and probably display in our feed, advertisements. I don't think, obviously we're not that cunning if we're talking about it on here on a live feed on their platform.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
But
know.
if we're talking about something off mic with it muted and there's no way they can hear us, then the phone and our watches and our iPads are the only way that it would possibly know. So we're going to try to come up with something right now while we play this review of Halloween Kills. And we're talking about something a little bit creepier right now, which is Big
here's
Brother
the
and Big
thing.
Tech watching us.
We're taking a little bit of time to get to the review, but honestly, this is scarier than the movie.
Hey, what better topic than Big Tech to come up
way
on
scarier than the
Halloween?
movie.
So we're going to come up with something to talk about, a certain, item that we could purchase while the review is playing when nobody can hear us except their devices to see if they're listening in. And we're going to report back at the end of the show if we see any ads for those things that we talked about during this review. So none other than, let's get right to it. Here is our review of Halloween Kills. Let's see if Michael Myers... I don't have a good segue. I was gonna say,
It's spooktacular.
it's spooktacular. Here it goes.
For over 40 years, one horror franchise has become synonymous with Halloween. So much so that it even shares its name with the holiday. The series that brought us horror icon Michael Myers began in 1978, but has taken several missteps along the way. But all of that looked to change when the series was rebooted in 2018. Ignoring every previous sequel and following directly from the original 1978 film, the simply titled Halloween was a success. And with the Halloween franchise effectively revitalized, the same minds behind the 2018 revival set to work on continuing the franchise. As with the 2018 film, Halloween Kills is produced by Blumhouse from a script written by Danny McBride and David Gordon Green, who also directs. What was a winning combination in the last film, however, seems to have already somewhat soured in Halloween Kills. Returning once again to reprise her role as Laurie Strode is Jamie Lee Curtis, alongside Judy Greer reprising her role as Karen, Laurie's daughter, and Andy Matichak as Allison, Laurie's granddaughter. Halloween Kills picks up on the same Halloween night in 2018, before briefly flashing back to the original night in 1978 to help bring things full circle, before catching up to Michael, who was last seen in the burning home of Laurie Strode. Because this is Michael Myers, he of course survives to continue his killing spree. And this time it will take more than just Laurie Strode to stop him. Halloween Kills introduces a lot of interesting ideas and themes to the series, while doing its best to reinforce the idea that Myers is more than human, a figure of pure evil. While trying to be introspective on the nature of fear and evil, the film upends the town of Haddonfield, bringing back surviving characters from the original film, such as Tommy Doyle, played by Anthony Michael Hall, to showcase the effect Myers has had on the town and the fear that has festered there. Much of these ideas are good and could have made for an interesting new take on a tired story. Unfortunately, the film is a mess. While the ideas the creators of Halloween Kills have for the franchise are smart and unique, and truthfully a smart direction to take the series into, almost everything in the film is poorly executed. Halloween and Michael Myers thrives on subtlety. Despite the original film birthing the slasher genre of horror, the original Halloween was a far cry from the generic slasher films it inspired and later sequels would become. What made Myers scary wasn't his brutality or gore, but suspense and well-built tension. Halloween Kills lacks any tension or suspense at all. Everything in Halloween Kills is done in excess. From Michael's brutal kills to the quick escalation of the town becoming a mob, the movie never takes a moment to sit back and truly reflect on the horror Myers has inspired and the monsters the town have turned into. Sure, the movie goes over these details and lazy bits of dialogue, but if I have to be told the town has turned into monsters themselves due to the fear induced by Myers, then it's no longer scary. Likewise, the movie is so desperate to reinforce Myers as an unstoppable supernatural force that it literally pits him against over-the-top impossible odds twice just to prove he will always survive. Something longtime fans of the series already know all too well without needing it force-fed to them. Again, what makes Michael scary is more the unseen than what is seen. And if I see how Michael survives ridiculous odds, it takes away from the mystery and intrigue of the character. And once the myth is broken, he's no longer scary. Halloween Kills has several great ideas, but sadly forgets the roots the series comes from, which is even more egregious a sin since the film is from the same people that brought us 2018's Halloween, which was solely made to take the series back to its more suspense-driven scares. There is fun to be had in Halloween Kills, and there are a lot of well-done moments. Hardcore horror buffs will most likely be pleased, and longtime fans of Halloween that accept even the worst of the franchise can rest assured that this is far from the worst film in the series. But for those who were excited to see the series return to what made the 1978 film so good, will be disappointed. Halloween Kills, it just kills a little too much. I give Halloween Kills 2.5 out of 4 stars.
Ooh.
Be honest.
Doesn't seem like Michael Myers was that spooktacular.
The more I talk about this, the more I talk about this movie, the more I think I gave it a half star too
think
many.
you did.
I think you did too.
Yeah.
You gave it a little bit more love than I would have. Two out of 4 for me.
Yeah.
Sean, what about you?
I was 1.5.
Oh wow.
Oh wow, you didn't like it at all.
Yeah.
I did not.
I did not think it's the worst in the series, but it was too excessive.
Oh my yes, absolutely. My parents actually texted me before the show or before we went and saw it.
Yeah.
And which they were profusely apologizing. And it's all right. They didn't spoil anything. I actually thought they were going to have the opinion of it that they did, which is they hated it. And granted, they're cut because when
Brian
they
gives it 1.5 too.
Oh, he didn't like it either.
No.
Yeah, he watched it on Peacock.
On the peacock.
But my parents ultimately I understand where they're coming from because when I pitched it to them, I even told them about how this series is supposed to forget all the other ones. It just stems from the first movie.
Yeah.
And so I think they were looking for something to harken back to what they went and saw in the theaters when the original one came out. And of course, it's a beloved classic. It's something I think a lot of people watch on Halloween. Yeah, it's got your teen angst in it in terms of them fooling around with with each other and them smoking weed.
Yep.
But it's like, as far as ultimately, like, it's very basic in terms of the overboard, kind of explicit nature that it has in it. And the worst of it is that, it's these teenagers who get hunted down by a serial killer. And so what is the difference is that 2018 kind of modernized it with the first Halloween reboot.
But it
was fantastic.
It still felt within the realm of what the original, I mean, not quite.
Along the same lines.
Yes. And that was my problem with Halloween Kills, is the simple fact that they brought back the franchise in 2018, and they said they wanted to take it back to its roots and make it more like the 78 version. And it was. They kept Michael to the shadows most of the time in the 2018 version. But in this movie, they threw all that out the window. There's no suspense, no tension. It's not like the 78 version at all because it's very in your face. Michael's very... And I mean, he always has a brutality to him, but you don't see the it's just like I said, everything in this film was just excessive,
way over the top.
Yeah,
and honestly, I was talking to my boss at work who went and seen it this past weekend, and even he brought up the point of and I don't want to spoil anything, but there's 2 scenes in particular, and you bring it up in the review of where they obviously make Michael seem like the crazy tank of a person, immortal human that he is.
Right.
And of course, we've seen that from the past films. But again, this whole reboot was to kind of bring some levity and gravity to this series to make it something that was an extension of the first one, but still within the realm of possibility and still the mystique around the character that made him so haunting and creepy in the first place. However, they made him too much like Jason.
Yeah.
They made him too much like another slasher flick. And it's like, Why would you do that to a character who's beloved for his creeping in the shadows and being calm, cool, and calculated, and that's what makes him scary?
Yeah.
I just didn't understand why they took this approach that has already been taken with the Rob Zombie Halloweens and other Halloweens like Resurrection and H2O. It's like they went overboard, and I'm like, that's not what Michael Myers is.
Right, they took him out of the character
Yes.
of Michael Myers.
Yes.
That was one of the things that people hated about Rob Zombie's versions was like how graphic those were, and it was funny because this movie is like outside of Rob Zombie's movies is the most graphic Halloween movie as far as gore and violence. And a lot of people hated that about zombies because it's like, that's not Michael Myers. And to see that kind of again in this was really weird. And I do think you had also said that you don't think your parents realized that this was a sequel to, like you feel
well, they thought, they were a little bit confused in that I think they thought this was the first one as the direct sequel. They didn't know about the Halloween 2018. And here's the thing, I don't think they would be too favorable towards that one either, just because it's a little too modernized.
Yeah.
But I think they would like it more than this one. And I would even say, no doubt, what made 2018 so much better was not that it modernized it, but that it had so many of the same elements from the original.
Yeah.
The whole entire scene, I watched it before we went and saw this one. The whole scene at the end where Laurie is creeping through the house and you know he's there.
Yes.
Way much more tension build up. Way much
There's
more.
the room with the dummies under the sheets and all that kind of
and
stuff.
you
And
almost,
you're just like, which one's him?
Yeah. Yep.
Well, and even I do like the way, because obviously when that one ends, he's trapped in the basement and the house is on fire because she like that was the whole point, was to get him down there so she could catch the place on fire. And I do like when this starts up how they explain how he gets out of the basement at first, because I was like, okay, this makes sense.
Yeah.
He's trapped in the basement, it's caught on fire. That's how the first one ends. This one picks up and it shows like the firefighters coming. I was like, it makes sense on how he escapes now. But then they go overboard.
Way overboard.
By the time he gets out and you see like there's 12 firefighters outside and he's just mowing through them.
Now, I will say the only thing that really confused me about the beginning of this film was at the end of the last film, they drive out to the middle of nowhere. They are nowhere near any other homes. She purposefully picks a place out in the middle of the woods.
True.
And in this movie, right at the beginning, when the house is on fire, the fire department's there. The old couple in their house are just like, oh, there's a fire at those
the
Stroh's
Well, I
house.
assume you can
or
still
whatever.
see the
Well,
smoke.
I think it was more so because she even brings up the whole like with the CPAP mask, and she's like, you're not smelling smoke, you're smelling the smoke from the Strode's place burning. So I think it was more of a, okay, it's out in the forest, but of course you see a forest fire, you could smell it for miles.
I know.
I think again, a stretch, but I was willing to give them the benefit of the doubt on that.
The time that it would take the fire department to get together and get out to where they were, he would have been burned. The whole house would have been completely burned down.
It was at least believable to the extent that the way I liked Halloween 2018 ending was that, okay, you thought he was dead.
Yeah.
You thought this is a good wrap up.
Yeah.
It was successful. They're like, okay, we're gonna make a sequel, and of course everybody's like, but you literally did just
burned him alive.
You burned him alive.
Yeah.
I mean, you did what Halloween 2 did, which was definitively in Michael Myers.
Yeah.
And at the time, that was the point, because Halloween wasn't supposed to be the series of Michael Myers. It was supposed to be an anthology series of all these creepy things around Halloween. So it was like John Carpenter, I think, wanted to definitively say it's not just about him. I think 2018, it was supposed to be the same thing. It was like, here's a hats off to this beloved character and another creepy adventure, but we're going to end it here. Oh, it's successful. And they, I think, cleverly came up with a good way of bringing him back.
Yeah.
But I was hoping for the same kind of conclusion with this film, knowing now, going into it, that it was going to be a trilogy. I'm like, okay, if they put him in another at-odds moment, but cleverly they find a way to tweak it so that he escapes, I'm all good for that.
Yeah.
No, they dropped the ball entirely.
Instead, they want to drive home the fact that he's this unstoppable supernatural force, which is fine. We've all known that from every movie he's in. But the thing that makes that scary is you never see, like, well, other than some of the later ones, which were really dumb, like the whole attack at the police station. But for the most part, the way you don't know how he escapes or how he survives. They point blank show you him surviving all these scenarios, and it just looks goofy because it's like, okay, I'm sorry, it's more scary when you don't know how he escapes constantly than to see him mow through 20 people that you're like, how? It's like that many trained firefighters with axes and saws.
And the firefighters
You brought it up
attack
in the
him-
theater.
They attack him one at a time.
Yes.
It's like they're a band of freaking brothers. They're
Yes.
the firefighters. They're going to hit the guy all at the same time.
And not only that, but you even brought up after you see one takedown, especially
Yeah.
the first one.
Yeah.
It's like either you're all going to jump on him, or why wouldn't you run away?
One of them would have ran away.
They watch each one go one at a time, attack
Like,
him and die,
it's
and
my
they're
turn
like,
to die. Oh, my turn to die.
It was pretty bad.
Yeah.
And again, there's another scene maybe about 15, 20 minutes later where they come up on the scene of all the slaughtered firefighters.
Right, yeah.
And to me, I turned to Keith and I said, that would have been a way as if you see him come out of the house, cut away.
Yep.
And then they come
Come
up on
back
the
to the
slot,
dead
and you
bodies.
have no idea how it was done. You just think this man is crazy and he's a menace.
Yeah.
And he doesn't. I mean, he's just a monster.
even
and evil.
outside of that, like there's a lot of homages to the original series. They brought back all the surviving characters from the original film in this movie. And honestly, I liked the fact that they got Anthony Michael Hall to play Tommy Doyle, and I liked the direction they were going to go with him because he is a good actor, and he could have brought that anger and like that mentality to the role, but it was done so unbelievably. Like the whole idea that he incites this mob mentality again.
With a baseball bat.
Yeah, it's
That
it's
old
something-
Huckleberry.
old Huckleberry.
Way too much focus
Yeah.
on that.
It's something
way too much.
Yeah, it's something that I can believe that this small town would turn into a mob to finally like just put an end to Michael Myers.
Yeah.
But I don't believe the way they did it in the movie.
Yeah,
It-
no,
well,
I
it was-
tonight when we were talking about it. I was like, it reminded me of the parents that get together to kill Freddy Krueger.
Yeah.
and it's like, yeah, they trapped him and burned him alive. But again, it's just that was somewhat believable that a town that's been fed up would just even the cops would play into it and allow it to happen. But this was like, I mean, this was hundreds of people. That were never affected by it. Some of them.
It's funny because
and-
I thought the plot itself of the movie with the mob and ultimately with the overarching theme of what they were going to do with Laurie Strode and her character and how it wasn't a direct connection of him going after her. I thought all of that, it was not well done. It could have been well done. I thought the plot points themselves weren't bad. The way it was executed was bad.
What parents are like, yeah, kids, let's go hunt Michael Myers.
Well,
it's like,
and-
we've
and-
had enough.
okay,
Evil
and-
dies tonight.
And honestly,
And it's,
yeah,
it's just
that-
like, what kind of parent would say, yeah, come on, kids,
Yeah.
here's a gun. You
Yeah.
go with us and hunt the evil
it's
guy.
Haddonfield, Illinois. That's
come on.
who out in the middle of nowhere. They trust their
in that
kids.
scenario, like Judy Greer's character, I found believable. She's like, no, you're not going hunting after them,
Yes.
getting there with your grandmother. But nobody else. Everybody's like,
Everybody
yeah,
else is
come
just
on,
like, come on, children,
Well,
let's go.
and that was the thing. And again, they were doing a stretch there as to, I don't want to spoil anything, but
Evil
what was
dies tonight.
what was causing that mob mentality.
Yes.
And I agree with, again, it would have been conceivable had it been built up at a slower pace and the whole movie not revolved around that plot point. Because here was my issue. My issue was they're trying too hard after, I guess, the success of the first one and it being so concise and a story in and of itself. This one, this was the fault, I think, kind of Pirates of the Caribbean, that trilogy as well. Pirates 1 you can see as a standalone.
Yeah.
2 and 3 are easily, definitely connected. And they obviously have 2 ending in such a way that it sets up 3 or it sets up we got to conclude this.
Yeah.
This one does the same thing, but again, all of the plot points that are introduced in this also wrap up in it.
Yes.
So I'm just like, why in the world would you have this slow? Why wouldn't you use a slow burn to lead us into the third film to get us amped up for seeing what the conclusion is? Because by the end of this film, I have no idea what they're going to do in the last one.
Yeah.
Have no
and
idea.
They keep saying, I was reading an article today from David Gordon Green. He said, "Oh, we have a clear idea of where we were going and everything from the second one that builds into the third one." But I'm like, but you did. You wrapped all the characters and new plot lines up in this one. Other than
Well,
It's the
stealing
last.
the
It's
fact.
the last Jedi of Halloween.
Exactly. I was going to say,
Yeah.
what's going to end up happening is if the third one by happenstance is actually good, then it's going to be just like The Last Jedi, where we could say, well, Force Awakens was okay. It got us back into it. And what was it? Rise of Skywalker
Yeah.
at least retconned everything from Last Jedi and ended on a high note.
Well, he said the last one's going to have a time jump to bring it back up to modern, it's like present day. But I'm like, okay, but the way it ended, it's like, so is Michael just on the loose for 5 years? Like,
yeah, it's like,
yeah.
where does he go? He's home.
He's home.
they established that in this.
But she said in that monologue, she's like, whether it's tonight or next year on next Halloween, and it's like I guess that's what's going to be. It's like he lies dormant till the net for
So
four,
what?
like, I don't know,
I'm confused now because
This takes place in 2018.
because it picks up right after.
Right,
picks
it's
up
the
right-
same night.
Yeah,
okay.
it's the same night as
Gotcha.
yeah. So other than jumping back to 78, but I mean, yeah, they beginning of the movie it has
so
like
the next
little
one would be 5 years later.
yeah.
And that was the other disappointing
And I'm
thing.
just-
Is the movie,
it's
the
weird.
way it picks up, just like with Halloween 2, and a lot of people had this complaint with Halloween 2 back when it came out, is it was Michael Myers on excess. But the way in which both of them start is very well done. Again, there's the whole emphasis on the mystery at the end of the first one, and at the beginning of of Halloween 2, the original, it picks up and it's kind of like, okay, it too is also, it starts out okay, and then you get into him chasing her throughout the hospital, and it kind of gets a little crazy. I don't mind Halloween 2. I actually think it's okay.
I like Halloween too.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I can understand why most people were like, it doesn't have the same intrigue and mystery and horror surrounding the characters
again,
as the first movie
When the
did.
original Halloween 2 came out, one of the things critics liked was they felt it was a little too excessive because it didn't have the same suspense and tension as the
right.
first.
It was
But
a slasher flick.
but it still had way more suspense and tension than this.
No doubt.
Yeah, yeah.
And
There was not that's what I told my mom is I said when she asked me what I thought of it, I said this was not a horror film. I was not scared or intense at any moment.
No.
There was no part of this movie where I was sitting there on the edge of my seat thinking that I was going to get scared. They tried to do jump scares, but they were all predictable, all cliche. There was no horror in this movie
No.
other than the gore. That was
Literally
it.
the only
and gore doesn't make horror.
No, it doesn't.
The only jump scare, which it didn't really get me, but I could see how it could get some people, was seriously when the old guy like flips the light switch
yeah.
on and Michael Myers is
Yes.
there and busts
And even
it
that
out.
I didn't get because it's like, why does he care to bust the light out? Why didn't
Sure.
he just
I
go,
thought the
go
same
after the
thing,
guy?
yeah.
I
Yeah.
thought the same thing. There were those little moments that I was like, okay, you all proved how well you knew Michael Myers in the first movie. Then you completely distorted him in this one, and we're like, well, now we have the authority and the ability to do our own version.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, that's not what this series was. The point of this trilogy was to set it back up from what we learned from original Michael. You used the original movie as a set piece, and you also used the Halloween 2018 reboot to also set him up. You have two movies that establish this character, and then in the third, he just completely ruin him by
The-
just changing his attitude. That
The
doesn't make any sense.
Only the part of the movie I liked the most, that felt the most like the original and the 2018, was at the end when he's chasing Judy Greer, and they keep him in the shadows, and like they have the original theme playing, and he's just slowly walking, and you don't see anything but his silhouette in the darkness, and I'm like, that's Michael Myers. And
Yes.
it's the only time in the movie they did it.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that was the most, and it's so sad because there's so many moments in the 2018 version that hit it spot on, and that's so sad that it's not till the very end of the movie, and even then, it's such a short moment within the film. It's not even an extended piece.
Yeah.
And that's, I don't know. I just overall, that's why I had to settle on 2. I think it's, I didn't hate the plot enough that it was a complete just, oh, this is so stupid. I just felt like, again, it was rushed and not paced very well. But overall, I liked the direction they chose for the story. It just, I felt like they handled it poorly.
Well, yeah,
They
the
fumbled it.
ideas and the themes I thought were actually good ideas and themes to introduce to the series, but
Yes.
they were all handled so poorly. I like the idea of like him inspiring so much fear in this town that they kind of turn against each other. It's like that's smart. I
But
can see
I
that
also
happening,
loved
but it was
how,
done poorly.
But I also loved how in the beginning of it you were rooting for him because you're like, I love that this town's banding
Yes,
together.
you want them.
and they were even saying they were like, no, evil dies tonight.
Evil
like
dies.
we're coming
It's-
together
until they go
Yeah.
crazy and chase after a mental patient that is very clearly, obviously not Michael Myers.
And that was
Yeah.
a part that
Yeah.
easily the plot.
And again,
It went way on
30
for way
minutes
too
of
yes,
long.
waste.
and I didn't
Yeah.
mind it because I mean it picked up from the 2000. You saw all the people escape the insane
Yes.
asylum in 2018, so it's like, okay, I get that. They're following on from that.
But
He's another
clearly
escapee.
the guy you
But
would not
yes.
think after
No.
even as enraged as
One
these
glimpse
people are.
of him,
Yeah.
Yeah.
would give away that's not
And-
Michael Myers.
He looked like I keep saying it, but I mean it's true. He looked like the penguin from Batman
He did.
Returns.
It-
I was just like, I don't know how you think that's Michael Myers.
And talk about excessive. I thought, and I don't want to give it away, the scene involving him was way too gory, and ultimately I thought was a little bit, it was like it's a little too far.
Yeah.
It just didn't have it. It was tasteless.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, even for gore in a horror movie,
It was trauma.
exactly. There was no added value
Well,
from it. And ultimately, my last thing is I'm looking forward to the end. I hope maybe they get some feedback on this one and they go back again to the drawing board of saying, okay, we got a little bit carried away.
Yeah.
Let's get back to the roots of why we started this project to begin with.
It has a lot of mixed reviews, so I'm hoping they look at that and realize, oh, this one wasn't liked as much as the other one. Maybe we did something wrong.
I hope
hopefully.
so. Because this is one where I hate to say I kind of side with the critics on this one more than the audience.
Well, this movie was a total trick, so why don't we get to the treat?
Wow, I think
like
so.
It was. I mean, they tricked me with, I thought I was going to get a good movie, and I didn't. So
You're going to introduce it? Don't do it yet. Hold on.
Oh, God.
All right, now I can do it.
here's our review of Casper. What would a happy Halloween be without the friendliest ghost you know? While the scarier side of the holiday paints ghosts and spirits as malevolent beings, there's one spirit who could not be bad or mean and is really glad to meet you. Of course, I'm talking about Casper the Friendly Ghost. And back in 1995, he even received his own live-action film, simply titled Casper. While Casper was not the most loved film by critics at the time, it was a massive success with kids of the 90s, and would go on to receive a new animated series based off the movie, and 2 direct-to-DVD sequels. Casper has gone on to become a cult classic and much beloved film for those who grew up with it. Which begs the question, was the movie as bad as critics claimed, or was it simply a movie ahead of its time? Starring Bill Pullman as Dr. Harvey, whose name was inspired by the classic Harvey comics and Harvey cartoons the character of Casper originated from, and Christina Ricci as Dr. Harvey's daughter, Kat, Casper tells a story of loneliness, finding acceptance, and the place where you belong. Deep themes wrapped in a macabre setting. Dr. Harvey, a self-proclaimed therapist for the dead, is soon wrangled into moving into the Whipstaff Manor by Catherine Kerrigan Crittenden, portrayed by Kathy Moriarty, a selfish woman who inherited the mansion and only wants the treasure she believes to be hiding inside. The only problem is Whipstaff Manor is haunted and she cannot get to the treasure. Bringing in Dr. Harvey to help the spirits within move on to the afterlife, Dr. Harvey soon encounters the ghostly trio of Fatso, Stinky, and Stretch, while the titular Casper seeks to befriend his daughter Kat. What we get is a funny and heartwarming tale. Casper has a perfect mixture of dark themes and macabre humor mixed with family-friendly affair, and is honestly a fine film that most audiences can enjoy with plenty of innuendos and laughs for the adults that will go over children's heads, but also plenty of hijinks and fun for the kiddos. Admittedly, the film does tread some darker territory, getting as close to the line as possible without going over. And while there is hackneyed dialogue and goofy moments, most of this plays into the film's charms. Even the darker moments only make the film more enduring. As a child of the 90s, I always loved how dark the film got. I felt like I was watching something deeper and more adult, presented in a way for children to understand, something that never treated me like too dumb to understand the concept of death. And while some may scoff at Casper's approach on a topic as dark as death and moving on, it is well done for a kid's film. Casper may not have been the best made film or the most memorable from the 90s, but the fact that it is still so fondly held in esteem amongst the generation that grew up with it is proof that maybe there was something it did do right. With a fantastic cast and a ton of laughs, Casper is an underrated gem of the 90s and a perfect film for a happy Halloween. I give Casper 3 out of 4 stars.
3 out of what? Another movie where Casper is better than Halloween Kills? What?
Actually, I'll be honest. Like
I think what was the one that we had that was like a weird oddity? But I think it was Scooby Doo. We gave a better score than was it Candyman?
Yes.
That we reviewed that week.
No,
No, that was
Candyman was before.
it was before
Halloween, I
October,
think.
but I can't remember. I'm trying to think. But I'll remember it later.
Yeah,
But no, it's just funny that
so far our
again,
Halloween reviews
have
have
almost
kind
been
of been better
than our main reviews.
I mean, Ernest Scared Stupid was lower than No Time to Die, but it's still just as enjoyable. This is way better than Halloween
well,
Kills.
hold on. We might need to mention too. Sean's gone.
Yeah, we don't need to mention that.
So
That just
here's the
happens
thing.
sometimes. Sometimes we just disappear.
Well, people don't realize that what we were talking about during the first review was about again our experiment for this week was talking about things and seeing if they'd show up on Facebook. Well, we talked about Sean the whole time, and we think that somehow the machine took him, and he is in Facebook.
Algae Rhythm.
Algae Rhythm.
Yeah. Space Jam too.
Space Jam: A New Legacy.
It's like Sean's been digitized.
Oh gosh! Actually, I think of this old '80s show that I loved, and there was only like 2 episodes, but I watched it.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Every time when I went over to my Aunt Linda's, and I'm now Captain Power.
Captain Power.
And they had the digital future, and it was like that was the fear, was that you would be digitized. But no, so Sean actually he's left us for the evening. He had to head out a little early.
He has a surprise brewing
for somebody special that he knows,
for someone he loves dearly.
So he's headed home to surprise that special someone.
He's gonna it may or may not be his wife.
It could or could not be Chris Pratt.
It might be someone else he loves. We're not going to say.
We know that's the only other one that
he's
going to
hear this later and be like, "Are you all trying to insinuate bad things?" And say, "No."
Yes, we are.
Oh, okay.
We are, Sean.
Yes, we are.
Your seat is empty because
he's with Chris Pratt.
That's it. He is.
And if that
he turned into a ghost like Casper.
If it was true he was with Chris Pratt, we would never see him again. He would just be gone.
He would be. No, he would need to bring him on the show is what he better.
That's actually true, yeah.
Yeah, what are you doing?
But yeah, Casper, 3 stars, much better than Halloween Kills.
I completely agree. Here's the thing. Much more enjoyable. I mean, it's a family-friendly film.
Underrated film.
It is.
Because it was not received well by critics. In fact, if you get on Rotten Tomatoes, it has like a 50%, at least according to my Plex. So,
shame on them. Shame on Rotten Tomatoes critics.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where it's like, I kind of get it, like looking back at it, like for the time in 1995, but at the same time, I'm like, I don't really, because...
No.
Like watching it as an adult, there's a lot of things about it that like I even appreciate even more. Like even Sean before he left said that he didn't like it as a kid, but as an adult he does because he understands it better now. And I mean, I did like it as a kid, but even now, like I will admit what he said is true. The joke they make, and I died laughing when they're at the breakfast table, and Fatso says, "I feel like Oprah on hiatus," and then Stretch says, "You look like Oprah on hiatus." I died laughing, and it was like I didn't understand that joke as a kid. I knew they were making fun of Oprah, but I didn't understand that it was because she was like they were making fun of her being fat.
Well, and not only that, but they have some stupid, cheesy one-liners, but that's their whole shtick. Like that's what I loved is that they went all in, and kind of like what Scooby-Doo did.
Yeah,
it understood its source material and it went all in. And the same with this. It was supposed to be family friendly.
They were supposed to be these obnoxious jerks that
just made puns around every corner. But the thing too that I liked about this was I did understand younger that while it had the goofy nature, there were more serious parts that I didn't really pay attention to when I was younger. But now that I've gotten older and I've seen it several times since, I do appreciate it. I like its approach to, you mentioned it in the review, Keith, about how it doesn't shy away from a serious topic about death and passing on and remembering those loved ones. It really takes those to heart in a very poignant way, in a way that's approachable for children.
Yeah.
You know, adolescents and teenagers and also adults.
I mean, there's some darker moments in this movie.
I think you even said it in kind of in joking fashion, but I completely agree. It was like, this movie, in my mind, is deeper and better told than Soul. Pixar movie.
Well, yeah, especially as far as handling death, like the whole story of like when Casper's finally remembering like his past and his previous life, and he talks about like wanting the sled and staying out all night, even though his dad said to come in, and getting dark and cold and sick. I was like, man, like, and he doesn't have to expressly say like that he died, but you know that's how he died. And I was like, this is kind of dark, but it's handled so well that even as a kid, like usually in slower moments like that, I would tune out. But even as a kid, like watching Casper, I knew there was something there that was like I was just like, I liked it.
It really brought me back to those films that I feel like we had growing up that they just don't have now, which is they either try to water it down way too much, or they try to explain it in such a way that doesn't necessarily offend anybody, or that they can't have a certain way of saying something to possibly offend somebody. So they've got to spoon feed it to you in a very simplistic way, or that just destroys the narrative altogether of what point you're trying to make. And that's what I loved about this, is this reminds me of the films that I remember seeing as a kid that really tackled these tough issues, but in such a way that they were digestible. They were something there for me to conceive. And like you said, without having to be so overt and direct about, oh, you know, I got sick and I died of a cold and my dad and my mom were sad. It's like, no, the way he's telling it, the somber way he's emoting.
Well, it's like a child telling you. And it was.
Yes.
And it was very, like you said, poignant and something that they didn't have to like be like, well, I died, but at the same time, it was something that was touching. And
I just really felt
there's a
like
lot of touching moments in the movie.
No doubt. And I just really felt like as the movie went on, the way in which it was written was you can tell they took care and consideration into the subject matter.
Yeah.
It wasn't just like this is just a kid's movie. We got to entertain them. Let's throw in some little touching moments just to appease the crowd and say, see, we applied this. It's safe for children and it's happy-go-lucky. Like, no, they really took the time to make it a very personalized story. And, I love the father-daughter nature between Kat and
their
Bill Pullman's
relationship
character.
I felt like an actual I mean
Yes.
I love even when they first encounter the ghost and get scared and he's like picking her up and carrying her through the
Yes.
house.
I
was
love
like,
that. And that's exactly what a father would do.
He's like,
and
I'm getting you the heck out of here.
And I love the scene of like you know that she's like distressed and mad about having to move all over the place, and he said, "Give me this one last chance.
Yeah.
And if this doesn't work, we're done. We're settling, and I will live out."
Well, even
my days for
the
you.
subtle
And
nature
I thought
of
that was beautiful.
without having to blatantly state it over and over, the fact that like really his whole paranormal investigation is just an excuse for him to try to find his wife who has passed on. And I was like, they didn't have to completely beat that over your head for you to realize like, that was his intent all along. He didn't actually believe in this whole therapy for ghosts thing, but he was doing it because he thought if there was any chance that he could find life after death, maybe he could get in touch with his wife. And I did love that. I mean, even like I tell you, the scene like they build up with the ghostly trio joking and like they like, oh yeah, we know her, we can contact her. And it's like they build it as kind of like this touching moment, but then it's the whole reveal.
It's a great scene.
But it's so them, and at the same time, it does have that touching moment to it. But then he gets like the rugs pulled out from him,
and the dark nature in which like. They're like, hey, it's time that he stops feeling all this pain. He needs to be on this side with us.
Yeah.
And they try to like,
he's like, the
kill
trio
him.
needs to become a quartet.
Yeah. And I'm sitting here and it's funny because I'm like, well, from their perspective, they're okay with it, but they're literally
doing him
talking
a
about
favor.
killing him. It's great. But it does it handles it very well. And I'm sorry, but you just don't see
change their
movies like
mind.
that. They do. And something else happened.
Yeah.
But it's good. It's a good.
But even
they
some of
just
that
don't
could have
approach-
been hokey or campy.
Yeah.
And while it does have some camp to it because that's the nature of the film, I felt like it's handled well. Even like the idea of the machine that could bring a ghost back to life, like the way they introduced that, like that's something that I could see in a modern day kids movie would just be so out of left field. Like they now have some machine, but the way they slowly tie that into Casper's like forgotten memories and like
and
they
the
find
fact
the
that
news
like
articles.
his dad's an inventor,
Yes.
and it's like it's even for the crazy harebrained idea that the machine was, and he even said like he never got it to work.
Yeah.
And like even the potion that they find in there, it's like Casper's weird explanation for it. It's like, well, that's what a kid would say.
Yeah.
I just there were all these little elements that again, I don't think in a kid's film today you would see that attention to detail.
It was thought out, yes.
And also they wouldn't care. They just don't care. And they care more about the moments of the but they don't care about how you get to them or arrive at that point. And I'm sorry, that to me is what makes everybody talks about the secret sauce of what a Pixar movie is. That's it.
Yeah.
It's that they're not just so ridiculous and out of left field, but they do kind of, at least up until I think recent history where we have critiqued them more, but they did have that secret sauce of being approachable and being relatable because there were so many elements that people could attest to of like, I recognize that I see part of that in me and how I interact with certain things.
Everybody praised Soul, but I honestly felt Onward, which came out earlier that same
So
year.
much better.
It handled that better, the relationships and getting you to those emotional points. And that's something that I agree Casper does. It gets you to those emotional points in a believable way.
No doubt. So 3 out of 4 stars for
I agree.
Casper. Great Halloween family film, and ultimately just a good film in general. Just check it out if you've not seen it, and hopefully it was a classic that we reminded you of if you haven't seen it in a while.
Sean says, because he's been listening, I mean, he loved the Dan Aykroyd scene at the beginning, but he also
it
said
was awesome.
the only thing he didn't like was at the end was because Casper stays a ghost. But it's like, well, it's Casper they can't make Casper human because
True. Well, they already
he's
used the
character.
potion.
Yeah.
And I don't want to give that away.
And I liked that
People-
better on
yeah.
why they couldn't use it on Casper. I
Yep.
I was like, okay, that makes because honestly they're
Yep.
like, well, Casper's this iconic character. We can't turn it, especially
Yeah.
because then like they
Well,
tried to make a franchise out of
yeah.
it anyways, which
I also love
failed.
that just before Sean left, he did say that his son calls
calls
it
him
Jasper.
Jasper.
I
And
thought
his
that was
youngest
great.
son says, I want to watch Jasper. So yeah,
That was
that's
good.
That is hilarious. I love it. So,
Alrighty, guys, let's move into our headlines this week. We got one major one that we got to talk about. So let's roll.
let's get into it.
that big beautiful open. Even when he's not here, he's gonna have to listen to me scat.
He's listening to us right now. Listen to us scat. Sean's got to hear this on his way home.
Edie's she's
You want to
jumping
scat
up
with us, Edie?
Oh, Edie, jump on the look at that. Oh, look at her. She's down.
She wanted to
Oh,
scat.
she's back up. She's back up. She wants to scat.
Do you want to sit in Sean's chair?
Oh, she just took your iPhone.
Yeah, she
man.
took my iPhone with her.
I don't know. That's
Maybe
not
she'll
good.
play with it. No, she can play with it down there. She'll be fine.
I don't know. Siri might listen. She might be trying to order some of that dog food for herself. She might. Uh-oh. He's just okay.
There it is. I
I
got
say
it back.
she will chew on things.
I got it back.
Come on, pup. Come over here. Calm down. Hopefully, Sean had his speakers just blaring.
I hope he had it all the way up, and then he's just like, I hate you all now. So,
But no, we do have one major big headline. It actually ties into our second headline. So obviously, everybody knows by now that Disney yesterday announced a huge amount of pushback
they did.
as far as their next set of onslaught releases.
Several movies, they've all been pushed back by 2 or 3 months.
Most of they're almost there. The entire 2022.
Yes, everything in
headliners.
20 now.
only-
Just 2022 because people did actually, because a lot of these are Marvel films too. It's their biggest movies. But someone did actually ask James Gunn, because Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is set to release in 2023, and he said no, that one didn't get pushed back. So
Okay. Well, and
basically, it
it's
was everything in
questionable, too,
2022.
because a lot of what the link that we'll have linked into the description of the video is going to link you to an article that brings up all of the different projects that got pushed back. The biggest one, I think, biggest pushback was, I think, Ant-Man and the Wasp. It got pushed back from I think February of 2023 to July of 2023. It was almost like a 5 or 6 month pushback. So, and then they have actually some that were untitled, either untitled Disney films or untitled Marvel
movie,
It was like
yeah.
either it said untitled Disney live action or untitled Marvel, and they just canceled those. They threw those off of the docket.
yeah.
And that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, Ant-Man and the Wasp went from February 17th to July 28th, 2023, but everything after, because Guardians comes after that, and people ask, and he's like, no, because at that point there's a long enough
Do you
gap
have the
that
whole?
they
Do
didn't
you have
have
the
to.
whole list?
Yeah,
Let's
I have
just
the
read 'em.
article up.
Start with number
well,
one.
Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, which is one I'm highly anticipating, went from March 25th to May 6th
Next year.
next year, which that's not too bad. Thor: Love and Thunder went from that May 6th spot to July 8th. Black Panther lost the July 8th spot that was moved to November 11th. So basically, they took all the Marvel films and just moved them from their spot to the next Marvel. So basically, they all moved back to each other's spots.
Okay.
Which makes sense. It's like if you move one, you because of the way Marvel's continuity is, you do have to move the rest. After that, the Marvels was postponed to early 2023 because it was supposed to come out late next year, and then Ant-Man and the Wasp was bumped from from February 17th, 2023 to July 28th.
And then one that was not a Marvel film at all.
Now
but
Indiana Jones
number
was
5.
pushed back, but I don't see it on here in this.
It's down at the very bottom.
Okay.
It's that they have them all listed, I think, from.
Oh, okay, yes, okay. So they do have a list. So Untitled Indiana Jones, previously set for July 29th, 2022, is now June 30th, 23. So it's pushed back almost a whole year.
A whole year. Now, here's what everybody's going to be thinking. This is
And
all
then, yes,
COVID.
they do have Untitled Disney movie, previously July 23, is now removed from the schedule. Untitled Marvel movie that was set for October 6, 23. And a lot of people were thinking that might be the new Blade movie. They never said, though. That got removed from the schedule, too. I mean, it's still going to come out at some point.
It makes sense that they remove it from the schedule, because why report on news from something that's untitled?
They
not
haven't even,
listed
they
anywhere?
haven't said what was supposed to be that
They're
day.
just
so.
they're just kind of coming out and saying, because they do their D23, 24, whatever they're on now. They'll do that every year, and they'll come out with an updated list of what is projected to come out.
Yes.
Now,
so-
most people are going to try to tie these pushbacks, and we even thought of it first. Now, the article kind of covers this.
To the pandemic,
We
yeah.
thought it was COVID related, but ultimately, what really has come about, and this kind of brings us into our second topic, which is the bigger one, which is the IATSE strike.
Yeah.
And could that be looming on the horizon here?
So
Is that coming soon?
they have.
So really, it's not COVID and the pandemic, but production woes.
They haven't given a clear reason why they pushed back, but they did say it has nothing to do with box office returns.
Which makes sense.
They just
because
said it's
Shang-Chi had a huge
Yeah, it had
release.
a huge
It was
one.
the highest pandemic
They
releasing
said
film.
it's due to production, but they didn't state why it was due to production. All these were moved back. So the general consensus is, well, if it's overproduction concerns, people are thinking they're concerned about the upcoming strike.
And I think it's also it has to do with not just the upcoming strike. I think that's what's driving tensions, but I also think it just has to do with slower production in general with people who either are or not who are or are out of the industry, with the people an exodus of the industry. And so I think that's kind of what the IATSE strike is about. It's about getting these new terms for the union members that they have been looking ever since the pandemic kind of swept in and took over. And what you now have are these people who are wanting these terms of agreements to be agreed upon on their next contract that's going to stand for the next 5 years. And they've apparently reached a deal, is what some of the union member presidents are saying. However, a lot of the IATSE members of the actual union are saying, well, we haven't seen we have not seen the details of the deal.
They're still waiting. Yeah, there's apparently a deal in place, but they said that they're not going to vote. Like they said, we're not going to vote to like not strike or whatever unless we know the details.
Right.
And it makes sense. It's like, why would you be like, yeah, we'll keep working even though we don't know what we're working
and
for.
What's kind of become grumbling and what people are is apparently like the deal was settled on. I think it was like it was last night. It was they went
October
late
16th.
into the so yesterday.
Yeah.
But October 15th
Well,
was when
not
the
yesterday
negotiation.
because today's the 19th. But I mean, it
Oh,
was
I'm
a few
sorry.
days ago.
Oh well,
Yeah,
my bad.
3 days.
I'm off a few days.
But still, October 16th is when
was that Friday or?
they reached a tentative contract. I think Friday was the 15th, so that would be a Saturday.
Well, and they said that the negotiations went late into the 15th.
Okay, so it probably would have been the 15th, which is Friday, but it was reached on the 16th, so they went into Saturday.
And
morning.
apparently, the presidents of these unions are telling the members, don't worry, this addresses all the woes. We're going to get details out to you shortly. And all the members are kind of waiting, thinking, well, we don't know. We obviously know that our bargaining chip was that we all voted that we would allow 98% would want to strike if the demands were not met. It brought that power to the table. So they thought going to the drawing board, okay, we got a little bit more negotiating power, and now that a deal has been struck, but we don't know the details of that deal, they're waiting to hear what the details are and seeing if they got tooken for.
Now it's time, like they're supposed to ratify this agreement, and a lot of the IATSE members are saying, well, no, we need to vote no on ratifying this agreement until we know what's in it.
Right.
And I mean, it's
common sense.
You can't. You're not allowed to know what's in it until you vote on it.
Exactly.
We can't tell you what's in the bill until you pass it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny that this same kind of argument has been used before in political tactics, and it's the same thing with these union members. It does come down to the politics.
Yeah.
And ultimately, you can look at the details of what the union is claiming they want as part of their deal, and you as a member of, whatever employment status you are with whatever company can determine if they're asking for too much or not.
Yeah.
However, within the film industry, I think they're kind of middle pot. We haven't talked about really the issues of whether or not we think what they're asking for is fair or not fair. And maybe we'll save that for even another podcast. Sorry to set you up for disappointment.
Yeah.
But I do think that right now, what they're waiting on to hear from is ultimately it makes sense. It's like everybody, because another common sense person, a part of all of this fiasco, is also saying, look, there's a lot of tension just being tossed around by the fact that, we're hearing, oh, we've got a deal made and we don't have a deal made and we're not agreeing to anything and we're just going to vote no anyway. And even that person saying, well, how do we know to vote no if we don't know what's in it? We don't know if we got what we wanted, or if some of the takeaways of willing to say, okay, we'll let that kind of slide and we won't vote on that, or we won't take that in our agreement. We don't know.
They're saying like higher ups are telling, well, don't worry, the agreement addresses all of the issues we had. But it's like, okay, you could say that, but we don't know what's in the agreement.
Right. And so I think what really is Disney's preparing for, and a lot of other production companies are preparing for, is ultimately to see what happens with this agreement. Because since all of this has happened with what is called. We explained it a few weeks ago how many types of agreements there are between the union members and ultimately the producers in Hollywood. And there's about 4 or 5 major agreements.
Yeah.
And within that time, the basic agreement, which is right now under contention and what's being negotiated, 3 other ones, I believe it's 3, it may be 2, but 3 other agreements have since basically expired.
Yeah.
So now those are coming up on the table to be negotiated and considered.
Yep.
And you have all of these other union members that are impacted by those agreements that are wanting to come to the table. So really what this is kind of setting the forefront, for is what is going to be accepted by these union members as part of film production. And how is this going to impact film production for those that are already in production and also for what's to come? Because at the end of the day, if a lot of these union members are not happy with this, do they all quit after they go on strike and they don't get what they want? And do other people come in and basically say, well, we don't need the union anymore.
Yeah.
We got enough freelancers or enough people we'll hire outright. Or does the union finally get what they want? And does production slow down because some of their demands and what they have in demand is not radical, but slows down production just by virtue, because one of the things they're asking for are simply to have days off and to not have quick turnarounds, or after a 10-hour day, they're not back on the clock for at least another 10 or 12 hours. There's certain things in here they're asking for that, a
Or
normal,
just even meal breaks.
yeah.
Like they say they often don't get meal breaks, and it's like, that's
And they want penalties for those who try to force them out of a meal break. They want 2-day weekends. They don't want just to have a day off and have to come back for another 12-hour day. There's things in here that I think most people would say, okay, that's common sense for a normal work day. Now, Hollywood and production, they could always argue,
production's
we've never
hard, it's not
operated
normal,
on this schedule. We've never had this kind of normal lifestyle.
And
It's always been all over
And
the
I do
place.
understand to a degree, because yes, it's like obviously depending on if you're shooting on location or what time of day you're shooting, it's like, okay, you have to get things set up. If you're shooting on location, you have to get everything set up to film. If you're waiting for a specific time of day to film, then you have to have it set around that time of day. If your character needs heavy makeup, okay, we talked about Freddy Krueger earlier. That takes almost 8 hours in the chair alone, and then he has to go to work filming for another 8 hours.
Right.
So it's like, I understand that sometimes there's certain things within production that aren't possible within a specific, 8-hour day. And a lot of these people are saying, well, then bring in other crew members. Like, we'll leave. And that's hard, too, because then you have to pick up where another person left off, and you have to be very detailed on what's going on.
It's more people on the payroll, and
yes.
then you have production costs that soar.
So, and I'm not saying it's right to force people to work,
Right.
16-hour days, but at the same time, I do understand that there is a little bit of a difference than someone flipping hamburgers at McDonald's for 16 hours a day.
Exactly. And ultimately, at the end of the day, these people do have that decision to make if they want to walk off the set and they don't want to work those crazy hours. But you always leave the option open that there's somebody else who will.
Yes.
And that's fine if you want to take that gamble, but you can't always be. I get where there's got to be some leverage here and some leeway, and I get that some of these people are willing to say, okay, no, we're not going to sign another 5-year agreement where we're left out in the cold and we don't exactly get something that's fair for our sake and for our talents.
Or even being like, because some of them make the point that it's like, they don't mind so much the workday or the schedule, but they feel like they should be reimbursed more, paid more. And it's like, that might be fair. It's like, okay, if I work 16 hours a day, I want to feel like I'm being paid for 16 hours a day. So there are different nuances, and it is, you have to be able to come to an agreement of some sort and realize that you're not going to get 100% what you want, and the other side shouldn't either, because it is about that compromise.
I would agree. So we're going to see how it shakes out, and ultimately we'll still keep following this and how it impacts production schedules.
Here's
what we learned with the writer's strike, and whether you want to say that it was a win for the writers or not, the fact of the matter is that obviously Hollywood productions were impacted. Mm-hmm. We all felt the pangs of the writer's strike, and we all were rooting for the writers to get what they wanted back then, just because we wanted great shows again.
Yeah,
and we wanted those writers to be valued.
It's like, just pay the writers so I can watch The Office again.
Yeah, exactly. And there's nothing wrong with that. And of course, I think many of those people in those departments will be like, yeah, good, you're on our side. We're on our side too. But at the end of the day, trust me, Hollywood is a huge machine, and just like any business, you can chip away, and rightfully so, when you're being mistreated and mishandled. you could chip away at that infrastructure, especially for those who have created it. But there's always the possibility that someone else is willing to step in. And if even if these productions go on hold, I have a feeling that Disney, Paramount, Universal, their pockets are a little bit deeper to withstand, just like they did with the last year in the pandemic. And we've seen that.
Well,
and it's not that they want to keep losing money. They definitely don't.
They don't.
But they're going to.
But they know how long they can hold out.
Right. And they're obviously looking at a bigger picture. And these union members have to do the same.
And even if that's, I mean, because if you look, a lot of these films, like Doctor Strange, are only pushed back a couple of months. So, and sometimes strikes can last longer than that. And I think it's also a thing of, well, if we push it back just a few months, long enough for us, if these people go on strike, to find non-union members to work on it. And that's also a possibility, too. It's like, okay, you go on strike, but there are production companies and crews, workers that aren't IATSE members that they go, well, we're just going to hire these people to come in.
Well, and that's always the fear, I think, of these union members. And now, granted, you could say, well, how easy is it going to be for them to
I'm not saying it
replace
would
300,000 people?
Absolutely.
Obviously not. But you give them enough time, they can.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's what Disney's trying to do. They're trying to just barter for more time to be able to figure things out if they have to.
Well, I think they're still recovering from just the pandemic in that regard as far as people getting back to work. And look, productions have been slowed down. And so I think pushing these movies back, I mean, hey, they haven't said anything about the release window and it being day and date with Disney Plus.
Yeah.
So theaters have just got to be happy that at least right now, they're
not
just
sticking to their 45-day window.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They are for this year and hopefully they will be for next year because, we have seen the numbers of the box office increase over the last
especially for
few
Disney's
weeks.
films. All of their movies so far that they've gone to theaters have been massive successes.
So we'll see. We'll keep tabs on it. We'll obviously keep following this and see what happens. But those are our headlines, and I think now we're ready to get into some story time.
Yes.
Let's do it.
It's story time, where the podcast members tell their stories.
I love telling my stories. I love my stories.
I enjoy hearing Aaron every week.
I know.
Story time.
I think every once in a while she tunes in and she's just like, y'all are still using my open.
Well, of course we are.
Of course. Why would we?
It's
not?
always good to have a reminder that Red Moon's more than just the people in this room.
Yeah.
And even if they can't always be a part of what we do,
they know the Red Moon family is big.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're more than just the three people here.
We are. They're just
not all the time.
Everyone's behind the scenes, you know.
Yeah. It's like we got more people here. They just don't always show up on the show. That's it.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Our unique weekly segment. Tried to come up with something funny this week.
Back and forth trying to figure things out.
Yeah, and I think we came up with a pretty good one.
I do.
One that'll take us back to the days of old, down memory lane. And that is our favorite Halloween costume. Whether it be our own or one that we liked growing up, because Keith, you mentioned a certain time that you enjoyed Halloween when we were in high school.
Oh, that was being facetious, but yes,
there were certain teachers who definitely.
Oh yeah, there's one specific. I won't name drop, but there was one specific teacher that he loved Halloween. I know because he made sure that he always made comments. And to be fair, his comments were a little inappropriate considering these are underage girls, but at the same time, he has a point in the fact that their parents did let them go to high school wearing these skimpy costumes. Yep. So, I'm not saying that makes his comments okay or right, but
it was. And I always took it as, and again, this would be my male privilege speaking. And I would not agree that they were appropriate comments.
If you wear, especially in high school, costumes that your butt's hanging out of and they are solo cut, it's like I'm a high school boy.
It's kind of the point.
It's like
it's what the girls are wanting, and they say it's not.
But from the good looking guys.
Well, of course, always. That's the catch.
And I won't name drop, but there are a couple guys I remember in high school. If they were to approach one of those girls and be like, "Man, you look good in that costume," they'd be like, "You're a pervert."
But here's the funny thing.
But if one of the football jocks said, "You look good in that costume," they're like, "Oh yeah, I do."
Yeah,
so
of course they would. They would eat
it
it
depends
up.
on who it comes from.
Of course.
Yeah.
But I do think that it was tongue in cheek with the way that teacher handled it, because it was more so. I don't know. There were,
but I enjoyed
in
Halloween in high school because all the girls.
He did it to draw attention to the fact that they were dressing that way. And yet at the same time, we had another teacher, and I don't want to name drop. He probably wouldn't care. He'd probably relish in it. But he specifically would always be like, happy Halloween, or as I like to say it, happy dress like a horror day. And I swear, he told us that to our class.
Well, it was true.
He didn't mince words,
but
and
it was
rightfully
true.
so. Because exactly, it's like, and we all knew, but I don't know. I think ultimately, at the end of the day, it's one of those things where I enjoyed, the spectacle for what it was.
Oh, yeah.
And I definitely had those moments where I was like, yeah, you could definitely tell there were certain girls who knew what they were doing. I can't even venture to think what it would be like today. I guarantee you it's 10 times worse.
Not at all.
Or maybe it's just completely horrible. And all
Maybe they just come to school naked now.
or maybe worse, they come fully clothed. Maybe
That's
now
true.
it's like,
It's probably not a whole,
it's sexist, and we don't dress sexy anymore, not for your attention. And it was like, I grew up with the mindset
I've seen the Halloween costumes still sold in stores. Sexy
they're
vampire, sexy nurse. They're still very popular.
Pirates.
Yeah,
Pirate was a
sexy. You got to put sexy in front of it though.
Yeah. Well, there were some that was like they didn't sell it that way, but it was like, come on.
Oh,
And there were some that were more tame, but it was like it still showed a little leg.
Oh yeah.
And it still had the low cut. But here's the thing: I always took it as, oh, well, wait. The girls were always arguing, well, we don't do it for you all anyway. We do it for other girls. I'm like, well, that's fine because I get to enjoy just as much.
Yeah. This really isn't the topic.
No,
of
it's not.
But we got. It is what it's like. I've been to a few Halloween costumes as an adult, and I mean I've had fun with that. But most of them are things I've just slapped together. All of my favorite costumes.
Those are always the best, though.
Oh yeah.
The last minute ones you slap
But
together.
my favorites
are always
were
the best.
when I was a kid, and most of those were actually ones my mom made. Not so much. I mean, I did my favorite store-bought costume. I think I remember, and it was back when Goosebumps was very like at the height of its. I had like the Swamp Man or whatever like costume, and I loved that costume because I thought it was so cool. As far as store bought, but I do remember, and I remember this one specifically because I wore it even when it wasn't Halloween. Like parts of it was my mom had made us like Ninja Turtle costumes, and I had this little like shell that you could wear like a backpack.
Yes.
And I used to wear that shell thing and flip around the house because I remember my brothers even laughing at me like, "What are you doing?" It's like, "I'm a Ninja Turtle." Like I'm flipping, like because it was awesome. Like I had this like she literally just sewed this thing together, but it did. It was this shell that I put on like a backpack and just I was flipping, and I loved that. I loved that when growing up.
I actually, my mom also did the same thing. It was like, we're not buying store-bought.
Yeah,
it's too expensive, especially for you to wear it one day.
Yeah.
Or maybe do a Halloween party at school. But I enjoyed it. It was funny because I look back on it. I joke about it all the time. But at the time, I didn't know. I didn't care. But no, my mom made me a Power Ranger costume.
Yeah.
And it literally was like red sweatpants,
I
got
red
sweater.
I got made a Power Rangers. I did wasn't
Yep.
store. I think I got a plastic mask that was store bought, but everything
See,
else.
and my
was-
mom didn't
was
even
made.
do that. She cut out the white diamonds out of cloth
Yeah.
to paste on my
Yeah,
chest.
yeah, same thing.
Just like the costume, or the Power Ranger costume.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just wore my regular tennis shoes, and I don't even think I had gloves. Maybe I had like white gloves. I don't know. But I know she took a milk jug, a gallon milk jug, and cut out the back of it so
Well,
it
you
would
had
fit over my head.
The White Ranger costume, right?
No, I had the red one.
Oh, you did the red.
I had I had all the toys, and
Yeah,
White
yeah.
Ranger was my favorite. But I had a Red Ranger costume.
Yeah.
And she painted, or actually, we didn't even have like a Sharpie or nothing. I literally remember it was like red duct tape, and she put red duct tape around this milk jug and cut out 2 holes and cut out a little mouth. It didn't even look like a Power Ranger hood. It just looked like a robot hood or something.
Yeah.
And she was like, "Yeah, you're a Power Ranger," and I didn't know.
Who
And
cares?
what's funny is I think there was a
But sometimes
picture.
I think your imagination, and I think that's something that's lost with like the store bought costumes. Your imagination made that
Way better.
like my mom this year made my niece's costumes. Like they're Winnie the Pooh characters, and she made Lainey Piglet, and Kinley has Al, and I mean she actually
Oh, yeah.
she made these. Lance is going to be Pooh, and they're not store bought, but they look really
Well,
good.
talk about imagination and innovation. It's like my parents, now that they're grandparents, the last few years they went overboard on that. They were all about it, and it became time for Halloween. It was like, oh, we're going to go to the zoo, and now we're going to have a theme. And one year it was literally like Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah.
And they went all out on the costumes. They went out on a cart that they rode in on that was mushrooms.
Oh,
And
I
then,
remember when they did Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings
and they
was
had the
awesome.
tree. Yeah.
And my brother-in-law was Gandalf.
Sam was
Frodo.
Was he Frodo? Okay.
He was
I knew
Frodo.
they were the hobbits, yeah.
And then I think Kate was like Gladriel, or she was an elf.
Sam should have been Sam.
Should have been Sam. But he had the curly hair like Frodo.
He did.
In fact, he was Frodo. He was Frodo.
Yeah.
But no, it was, and they made the tree for like an ent that they were riding on. It was beautiful, and it was fantastic. And it's like, well, hell, they one year it was KFC.
Yeah.
And Kate was like a chicken, and she was sitting in a
Yes,
bucket,
I do
and they were
remember that
riding
one.
on a chicken. It was hilarious.
Yes.
It was so good. But like you said, it all comes from that imagination.
Yeah.
And it's just like some of the best costumes I think are that exactly.
Good times, man.
No doubt.
I kind of wish I still had that Ninja Turtle backpack. I'd roll around in my basement. I'm a Ninja Turtle.
And that was the thing I wore. I definitely wore the Power Rangers costume.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it, and I wore it all the time after that.
I said, like I
had
kept
more fun.
I
With
kept
it.
like the belt and the shell because the rest of it was just like a green like sweatshirt and green sweatpants. But I mean, yeah, I did. It was great times. Great times.
Alrighty, guys. Why don't you write us and tell us what your favorite
Yeah.
Halloween costume was?
Let us know.
We're getting ever closer, man. Next week's our last Halloween show before the big day.
Oh,
Creeping
man.
up on us.
Next week's the week. Are we gonna have any
Spooktacular
treats
decorations
next week? Possibly.
Maybe some tricks.
Oh, I mean, like some candy, maybe. Possibly
I don't.
with a little kick to it.
Oh yes, we are.
Okay.
Yes, we are.
I didn't want to reveal anything.
Yeah, well, we will. Yeah.
Okay, okay.
A little sweet, little hot.
It's a trick and a treat.
Oh, there you go. I like that. I
Um,
like that. That's right. Yeah, we'll have that for
Me and
next
Sean
week's.
like to torture ourselves for all of you who know that some of the things we've eaten. So we do have something coming up next week to celebrate the holiday.
Yeah. What better way to celebrate than with
And,
a trick and a treat?
We'll have our 2 reviews. Next week will be Dune.
Big one on the block.
Huge
this
one
week.
releasing.
Yep.
And then our final Halloween review, it got the most votes during our poll. Brandon hates it.
To my chagrin, I didn't want to. I didn't want to watch it.
The Addams Family. I'm looking forward to it.
Here's the thing. When you told me that it has about the same rating that I think Casper does, or even better.
Oh no, it's fresh on Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh, it is fresh.
But I would put it on par. Yeah, it's just
Then
as
it
good,
gave me a
so.
little bit of hope.
I like it. It's a good movie.
I will say, other than just seeing little bits and pieces of the show that I was never a fan of,
You might like the movie better just because they update it
It's
to
in
be a
that
little
vein,
bit more.
but yeah.
I mean, it still hits all the tones of the show and the fact that they're this kooky, macabre family that just thinks they're normal and everyone else is weird. But yeah, and Christopher Lloyd as Uncle Fester is amazing. I do think you'll like that part.
I was gonna say we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see how it.
You may not like the rest of it, but I can't imagine you won't enjoy Christopher Lloyd. It's just hard not to enjoy him.
I don't know.
He's a great man.
I will say that I'm gonna watch it,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I will give my
We'll see.
my opinion, and I will be honest about how I feel about it.
Yeah.
I've never seen it before, never been a fan of Addams Family, but I will faithfully watch it and
Yeah,
give my
you
2
Go
cents.
find out.
Alrighty, guys, that's gonna do it for this show. As you see at the bottom of your screen, all of our social media accounts, Red
All
Moon
of them?
Vic, all of them,
All of
them right there. That's right, Keith. You got them all on your screen now. Red Moon Book, Red Moon Tweet, Red Moon Picks, and just search for redmoonproductions.com. Now we gotta do our wrap up here. We gotta tell the people what our experiment was and remind them. But
Yeah.
before that, I just want to say, hopefully everybody still has the feed up on Facebook and on YouTube, because it looks like our copyright strike hit. I guess probably during one of the reviews.
Oh man,
And
I don't know
hopefully-
which one it was.
Hopefully it wasn't taken down. I modified it so that it wouldn't, but we'll see. We'll fight that battle. I think we'll win on this one.
Evil dies tonight. we're gonna fight these censorship.
But like we said at the beginning of the show, our experiment was that we think big tech's always listening. No matter how
it's
much they
creepy
deny
sometimes.
it, Facebook and Apple talk about they don't share data unless we admit to it or unless we check the box and
They say
you can.
They don't listen to us. They say they track
Yeah.
who we're around and stuff, but they don't actually listen to anything from the microphone.
And you and
so-
Sean had a different experience tonight saying that they do.
The dog food was creepy. Like the other stuff I could buy being something else.
Are you
Is-
looking at your Facebook feed
I'm
right
looking
now?
at it right now. I don't see any of the stuff we were talking about earlier. So,
Okay.
like I said, the dog food could be a really weird coincidence.
I'm gonna go ahead and mention it. I'm gonna tell them, and I haven't
Go
checked.
for it.
I haven't checked my feed yet.
Go
maybe
for it.
maybe I should real quick just to see,
I'm gonna check. I don't see anything on here.
because I don't know. I'm a little curious. I think I have all mine honestly turned off anyway, but specifically, I'm looking for ads for teeth whitening.
Yeah.
That is what we were talking
We
about.
talked about oral hygiene. I don't see anything.
I'm not seeing anything right
So,
now either.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, the other stuff I bought, the dog food was just creepy, but it could have been just a really, really weird coincidence.
It could have been. It very well could have been. I'm liking it to either a weird coincidence or something that had been brought up on your feed before.
Yeah.
Or maybe it just popped back up. I don't know. I just have a feeling that maybe it was a little too conspiracy coincidental, or maybe they did know, and maybe they realized we're talking about it as a bad thing, and now they're like, "Hey, let's turn it off right now."
Now
for
they're
a
like,
little
"Oh, they're on to us." Yeah,
yeah, let's stop tracking them
Facebook's
for a
like,
little while.
they're on to us. We can't put any ads on for a little bit.
I will definitely post a picture though on our Instagram, Red Moon Pics. I will let anybody know if I see any kind of dental teeth whitening ad. That's what we were talking about. Now they really could bring it up though, because obviously we're streaming.
Yeah,
and
now
I'm
that we've
talking
mentioned
about
it, they're like, here's your dental whitening
But
ads. I did want to say,
so
though,
far I haven't.
I do think it's funny that our last 2 Halloween reviews both feature Christina Ricci.
Yeah,
Because she was in Casper.
and she's in Adam's
Absolutely.
family.
She's actually younger in Adam's Family than she was in Casper, so we kind of went backwards, but that's okay.
But we
Yeah.
brought that point up on the show when we picked the movies,
Yeah.
or when they were picked by our audience. But still, maybe be looking forward to it. I don't know.
I'm looking forward to it.
I'll let y'all know next week. All right, guys, that's gonna do it for us this week on the Red Moon Podcast. Thank you all so much for tuning in. You saw it up there a few times, other than our social rmpodcast@redmoonproductions.com. Throw us an email. Let us know what you think of tonight's show, what your favorite Halloween costume is, or if Facebook is tracking you. Have they heard at some point and shown you what you were talking about without them listening? Alrighty, guys, that's going to do it for this episode. So until next time, I will see you all later. I am one of your hosts, Brandon Davidson, alongside our normal new host, Sean Sebastian, and
I wanted to see if you'd do it for me, too.
Keith Cheatham. You were supposed to move your lips, though.
Well, Sean didn't move his.
We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. For more reviews, previous podcast shows, and everything Red Moon, visit our website, redmoonproductions.com. You can also like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter by searching for Red Moon Productions, LLC. We'll see you at the movies.